The men entering the factory thought Robert was just an old security guard, until the alarm started ringing. Because when Robert heard that alarm, he was no longer Robert. In one of Toronto's suburban neighborhoods, there was an old textile factory, a quiet place that had operated with the same routine for years. And working the night shift at this factory was a 67-year-old security guard everyone called Robert. Everyone who knew Robert said the same things about him. A calm man. Never hurts anyone. Drinks his tea, makes his rounds, goes home in the morning. He had worked at the same factory for 30 years, got along well with everyone, was a completely trouble-free person. But no one knew who he really was. October 23rd, Tuesday night, 2:30 a.m. Robert was sipping tea from his metal thermos as usual. Soft music was playing from the old radio, and only the gentle hum of machines could be heard inside the factory. There was no movement on the cameras. A normal night. At least it seemed that way. At 2:45 a.m., the sensor by the door beeped. Robert turned his eyes to the camera. 3 men were approaching the side door. Black clothes, ski masks, professional movement style. Under normal circumstances, Robert would call the police and escape through the back door. This is what any security guard would do. It was the smart thing to do. But Robert wasn't a normal security guard. While the men were forcing the lock on the side door, Robert was studying them. Their movement patterns, positions, the silent communication they established with each other. These were professionals, not ordinary thieves. And at that moment, something he had been trying to suppress for 30 years came back. The old reflexes in his body. His pulse slowed, his breathing regulated, his eyes sharpened. "No," he muttered to himself. "You're Robert now. Just Robert." But when the men entered and headed directly to the factory's most important machine, the old voice inside Robert returned. "What are they looking for? Why is this machine so important?" 3 men were moving systematically inside the factory. One looked like a technician, the other 2 were providing security. When they reached the main production machine, the technician pulled out a bag and began examining the machine. While Robert watched this scene, one detail caught his attention. One of the men was looking at his arm, not at his watch, at the small device on his arm. GPS tracking. "Damn," he whispered. This wasn't an ordinary theft. This was an organized operation. And at that moment, the alarm started ringing. Re-re-re-re-re-re. The factory alarm system activated. Red lights began flashing. The men seemed surprised. The alarm system wasn't automatic. Someone had triggered it. And that someone was Robert. But now, he wasn't acting like Robert anymore. The old security guard role he had maintained for 30 years changed in seconds. His posture straightened. His eyes sharpened. His movement style changed. When the men started running, Robert also sprang into action. But he wasn't running away. Robert, no longer just Robert, knew every corner of the factory. This wasn't 30 years of experience. This was deeper knowledge. When the first man emerged from the side corridor, he encountered something unexpected. The old guard was moving quickly as if he had never aged, and in his hand was a metal rod of unclear origin. "Who?" the man began, but couldn't finish his sentence. Robert's intervention was swift and effective. The techniques he had learned 30 years ago seemed as if they had never been forgotten. The man was on the ground, unconscious. The second man, seeing his friend's condition, radioed, "We have a problem here. The guard isn't a normal guard." When the third man, who appeared to be the leader, came face to face with Robert, he noticed the change in his eyes. "Who are you?" he asked. Robert stopped. He was hearing this question for the first time in a long while, and as he answered, he seemed like a different person. "My code name was Shadowhawk. I was active from 1987 to 1994. Then I retired." The man's face changed. Shadowhawk, he repeated. Are you that Shadowhawk? I am. And now I need to ask, what's your business in this factory? The man raised his hands. We were actually looking for one of your old unit members. Intelligence records showed you worked at this factory, but we couldn't find you. Robert was surprised. Which unit member? Someone with the code name Iron Wolf. Do you know him from the 1992 Balkan operation? Robert's heart stopped. Iron Wolf. He had worked with him for 15 years, was his closest partner, and 5 years ago, he had disappeared. Why are you looking for him? Because he is currently in great danger, and only you know where he might be. From that moment on, everything changed. These weren't enemies. These were active agents trying to save his old friend.
And the situation became clear. Robert, now a man who was both Robert and Shadowhawk, led them to the factory's guard room. He pulled out a file from the old metal locker. "I've kept this file for 30 years," he said, "because I knew someday I'd need it." Inside the file were details of secret operations conducted in the early 1990s, Iron Wolf's real name, his last assignment location, and information about where he could hide in emergencies. "If Iron Wolf is really in danger," Robert said, "I can find him. But this would be my last operation." The men were surprised. "Why?" "Because I've been living a normal life for 30 years. This factory is my real life. These people are my real family. And this identity is now my real identity." But his friend was in danger, and Shadowhawk never abandoned his friends. Over the next hour, the factory's guard room turned into an operations center. Robert used his 30 years of experience to determine Iron Wolf's probable hiding places. "There are 3 places in Toronto," he said, marking the map. "Old safe houses. If he's really in danger, he must be in one of these places." One of the men asked, "How can you be sure?" Robert smiled. For the first time in 30 years, this was his real smile. "Because I taught him those hiding places." Before leaving the factory, Robert pulled out something else from the old locker, a black box. Inside were an old ID card, a few emergency phone numbers, and a small gun. "I'll use these for the last time," he said quietly. As the men left the factory, Robert looked back one last time. This place had been his home for 30 years, his calm, peaceful life. But his friend was in danger, and some things never change. In the Toronto night, 4 men were quietly moving toward the first address. Robert's old reflexes had returned as if he had never retired. "The first house is in Scarborough," he said, looking at the navigator. "If he's not there, the safe house in North York. If not there either." "If not there either, what?" The old gleam appeared in Robert's eyes. "Then he's really in big trouble. And then they'll meet the real Shadowhawk." The old apartment in Scarborough hadn't changed since the 1990s. Robert checked if the key was still hidden in the same place, same spot. "Some things never change," he muttered. When they went up to the apartment, the 3rd-floor unit was silent. Too silent. Robert listened to the door. "Someone's inside," he whispered, but not moving. When they opened the door, the scene they saw shocked everyone. Iron Wolf was there. Old, worn, but alive, and he seemed to be waiting for them. "Shadowhawk," he said in a calm voice. "You came." "Iron Wolf. You're okay." "I'm okay. But we are in the middle of a big problem." Iron Wolf stood up and walked toward the window. "They're following me. They're trying to uncover one of our old operations. And if they succeed, what will happen? Then not just us, but many innocent people in this country will be in danger." As Robert and Iron Wolf looked down from the window, they remembered the old days, the dangerous moments they had shared together, the lives they had saved. "One more time," Iron Wolf said. "The last time. Then we really retire." Robert thought about his factory, his calm life, his Robert identity. "Okay," he said finally, "but this time it's different. This time we're going home." "We're going home," Iron Wolf confirmed. The next morning, everything was normal at the factory. Robert arrived on time, brewed his tea, said good morning to everyone, but there was a different gleam in his eyes, because now he knew who he was, and sometimes, during his night shifts, he would think about the old days, his Shadowhawk days. But now, he was both Shadowhawk and Robert, and that was enough for him. Walking through the factory corridors, sipping tea from his thermos, Robert was no longer an ordinary security guard. People still called him Robert, but now he knew. Sometimes a person could be more than one person at the same time, and sometimes that's what the world needed.